She's a wonderful woman. I think she's a powerful force of good and positive energy.
But she ain't no Elon.
But she also brought us Dr. Oz and The Secret. We have to remember what this lady has done.
She has to be held accountable.
I forgive her, but I mean, cut the shit. The Secret is a particularly egregious offense.
What? You don't believe?
You don't believe? Believe?
I want to be rich. I am rich.
I imagine myself flying. I can fly. I will beat my wings until I take off.
If the name Oprah still makes you think of wise quotes, warm hugs, and screaming, "You get a car," you're living in the past, my friend, because Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly just bulldozed that fairy tale into the ground. These two didn't come to sip tea, they came to spill it, set it on fire, and walk away in slow motion. Rogan came out swinging with truth bombs so heavy they could dent the Hollywood sign, while Megyn brought the blade, cutting straight through the glittery media fog like it was wrapping paper on Christmas morning. And Oprah, she's suddenly looking like someone snatched the mic right out of her hand mid-inspirational quote. Whatever they said didn't just rattle her. It cracked the perfectly curated shell of her billion-dollar brand. So buckle in, because this expose makes her famous couch interviews look like bedtime stories. No fluff, no filter, and absolutely no commercial breaks.
I used to love Oprah, like most of us who grew up when we did. And only now did I realize I've been getting spoon-fed propaganda from this woman for years. I always took her little setup packages as gospel. You know, before I was a reporter, I never even thought to question whether Oprah might be intentionally misleading me. Then last night, the dawn came and I was like, oh my God. She is not a reporter, she's a propagandist.
Picture this. You're standing at the very top of a glittering empire built on kale smoothies, jade eggs, vision boards, and at least 24 spiritual life coaches who probably all charge by the minute, and yet somehow common sense never made it to the guest list. That's the twisted peak of Oprah Winfrey's kingdom, a place where vibes matter more than facts, and quoting your intuition counts as research. It's all incense, energy healing, and answers written in cursive on pastel-colored affirmation cards. But Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, they didn't just raise an eyebrow, they brought the dynamite. They blew a hole straight through the glossy surface and exposed what's underneath, a hollow fantasy wrapped in overpriced self-help buzzwords. No more cozy couches or emotional soft-focus interviews, just the scorched remains of a brand that sold feel-good illusions dressed up as enlightenment.
Rogan is calling out Oprah and Michelle Obama for hypocritical speeches at the DNC. Watch.
She's up there talking about income inequality. Like, hey, lady.
Yeah, I know.
You're rich as like, how is that equal? And also, when Michelle Obama was saying, you know, I think she was saying her mother or grandmother was always suspicious of people who took more than they needed.
Yes.
Like, you are worth so much money.
Take more than they need. The Obamas have 4 mansions.
I mean, it's a bunch of rich people talking about rich.
Joe Rogan didn't just show up with opinions. He marched in like a one-man demolition crew, wielding a steel chair labeled logic. And trust me, it hit harder than a conspiracy theory on cable news. Right behind him was Megyn Kelly, flamethrower in hand, set to accountability, and together they turned Oprah's empire into a bonfire of delusions. It was like tossing a TED Talk into a blender set to liquefy. So let's start with the golden altar of the Oprah cult. For years, she's been marketed as America's emotional GPS, except this one doesn't use satellites, it just shouts, "Believe in yourself," before careening off a philosophical cliff. And what did we do? We cheered. We lined up. We bought every glittery hardback filled with recycled affirmations and chewed through overpriced moon water-infused wellness dust disguised as healing. We didn't question it. We just paid it for the privilege to be confused by pseudoscience in designer packaging.
Well,
Yeah.
it was one of the more I want to say disturbing, but it was confusing when that was taking hold with people. When I had friends that were telling me that The Secret is real and that they imagined they were going to fulfill these childhood dreams that they had about whatever, being a fucking astronaut, whatever it would be. There's a couple people that I knew that were trying to tell me that The Secret was going to be the thing and that they had a vision board and they had photographs. They put pictures up of the things that they wanted, like them in front of large crowds and shit. And I'm like, oh boy.
Them in front of large crowds.
This is so not how it works.
But then came Joe Rogan, America's favorite cage fighting philosopher, the guy who mixes protein shakes with existential questions. He stood there, arms crossed, looking at Oprah's shimmering empire, and calmly asked the question no one else dared to whisper. Wait, are we all just pretending this glittery self-help circus isn't a high-functioning con job? No fluff, no filter, just truth hitting harder than a roundhouse kick. And then Megyn Kelly, oh, she didn't just walk in, she launched herself into the mess like a missile with earrings off, heels ready to stomp the nonsense out of every overpriced affirmation card. It was like she'd been saving every ounce of journalistic firepower for this exact moment. Like calling out Oprah's quackery was on her professional bucket list, and now she was crossing it off with a vengeance. They didn't just poke the bear, they exposed the circus behind it.
Did you see the Oprah interview?
No.
She's off the rails.
Yeah,
Off the rails.
I heard about it.
Into fucking wine mom country again.
Wow.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that.
Tim Dillon is the best. Dillon's like, she's saying gypsy curses. What is she saying?
When was the last time Oprah actually spent time hanging out with a working class person in America? She's on her Montecito estate with one of the most beautiful mansions known to man. And that is why she did not follow up with Kamala Harris in response to that stupid gun question with, well, you're on camera saying that you favor mandatory gun buybacks. So how would that work? The Oprah enthusiasm worked when it was genuine.
Let's dive straight into the sea of nonsense, shall we? Remember Dr. Oz, Oprah's personal science project, her very own Franken guru. She handpicked him, polished him, promoted him like he was the next messiah of medicine, until one day he shuffled out of the wellness lab, blinking in the daylight, and tried to run for office like a sentient Whole Foods aisle with a political agenda. Rogan's eyebrow flew so high it nearly broke Earth's orbit. This is your guy? He practically shouted, baffled. The same guy who sold raspberry ketones like it was some kind of super serum brewed in Wakanda. And then came Dr. Phil, the Southern Fried pep talk machine with a PhD in whatever Oprah's mood of the day was. Kelly didn't hold back. She looked straight into the camera and held up a giant mirror to Oprah's face, saying, "You turned a mustache with a catchphrase into a TV therapist whose claim to fame is yelling at teenage girls in front of a clapping audience." And Oprah? She just nodded, eyes glowing with delusion, whispering, "Yes, healing." But Rogan and Kelly didn't need to raise their voices. They calmly stripped back the mountain of curated affirmations, inspirational quotes, and branded vulnerability to reveal what was really ticking underneath. A billion-dollar machine engineered to sell feel-good lies wrapped in lavender oil and tied with a live your truth bow. And then we have her holy grail, the Oprah Book Club, a literary monarchy where the queen once handed the crown to The Secret, a book that teaches you the universe is basically a psychic Amazon Prime that delivers whatever you manifest hard enough. Rogan nearly lost it. Wait, so you're telling me someone actually told cancer patients they just need to raise their vibrations, and Oprah gave that message a global stage? His jaw hit the floor, and honestly, so did everyone else's sense of sanity.
Yeah, so let's think of when The Secret came out. I want to say that was like 2006-ish.
2004.
2006.
Nice.
Okay. So 12 years ago, she was 50 years old. How the fuck do you not know when you're 50 years old and worth $1 billion that that's not how it works?
That it's hocus pocus.
Yeah, it's not hocus pocus.
Yeah.
And to sell that to people is crazy. And that's a book that sold, I think I was reading, it sold somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 million copies.
Wow.
Is that what it says? Yeah.
Jeez.
That's crazy.
Megyn Kelly didn't just raise an eyebrow, she raised the entire damn bar for journalism. While most networks are still stuck whispering sweet nothings into Oprah's ego, Megyn came in like a storm in heels, calling it exactly what it is. This woman, she pointed out, sold Think Your Way Out of Poverty to struggling families who didn't need good vibes. They needed good policy. And the irony? It only gets richer. Oprah somehow rebranded herself as America's moral compass, as if she's the breathing breathing, brunch-sipping conscience of an entire nation. But let's not pretend this is the same woman who built an empire on daytime theatrics, audience tears, and talk show chaos that once aired episodes like I Married My Horse. Rogan, blinking like he just woke up in a different timeline, practically shouted, "Did we all just forget that?" But wait, the crown jewel of absurdity? Oprah's transformation into a full-blown political influencer, because nothing screams I'm relatable quite like a billionaire sitting in her private vineyard telling everyday folks which Senate candidate feels right in her spirit. Rogan nearly combusted. "Feels right," he snapped. "You picked a senator the way you pick throw pillows." Meanwhile, Megyn, arms crossed and tone like a buzzsaw on truth mode, didn't blink. She sliced through the sanctimony. Oprah has more money than the GDP of multiple small countries, but still pretends she understands economic hardship. And the only inflation Oprah knows, it's when she cranks up the price of her signature chai-scented candles, which yes, actually exists, but just when it seemed like they torched it all, Rogan leaned forward, voice low, eyes locked in, and dropped the final boss truth. Oprah thinks she's somehow above media bias, but her entire brand, her entire career is a polished masterclass in emotional manipulation, expertly wrapped in cashmere blankets, whispered affirmations, and flickering candlelight. It's not objectivity, it's just propaganda, drenched in rose oil and sold with a smile.
She's trying to shove messaging down my throat of whatever she believes, not what's real. So, you remember she did that, like, kind of factual interview after the, quote, documentary of Michael Jackson?
Yes.
That was so dishonest.
Yes.
She did not raise any of those accusers' serious compromising facts when she had them right there. Maybe they're telling the truth, maybe they're not. But as a journalist, you have to at least ask. You know, you've got multiple lawsuits against his estate, sir. Might that be an incentive to lie? Didn't ask.
Megyn Kelly was nodding so aggressively, you'd think her neck was trying to stage a rebellion. She wasn't just agreeing, she was testifying. Oprah isn't just biased, she said. She is the bias. The queen of soft lighting, audience clapping, and weaponized sob stories turn morality into theater, emotions into marketing, and crying on command into an empire with global reach. And just when you think it couldn't get more absurd, enter Oprah's spiritual dream team. You've got Eckhart Tolle mumbling about presence like a guy who just forgot where he left his car keys, and Deepak Chopra tossing out quotes so vague they double as fortune cookie filler and horoscopes. Rogan, he nearly fell out of his chair. Wait a second, this woman built a billion-dollar franchise on bumper sticker wisdom and managed to convince the world it was actual enlightenment? He wasn't even mad, he was impressed by the hustle. Meanwhile, Megyn was practically combusting in a blaze of spiritual rage, pointing out that Oprah has spent decades like selling inner peace like it's a fizzy bath bomb, all while never addressing the real systems of suffering, poverty, inequality, failed policy, you name it. And no, her influence doesn't stop at a dusty bookshelf or a Sunday special. Oprah has burrowed her brand into podcasts, documentaries, foundations. She's turned mystic capitalism into a global lifestyle franchise. Every time someone lights a lavender-scented candle and scribbles a gratitude list while ignoring their overdue rent notice, Oprah's estate gets another wing added. Rogan just sat there, blinking like he was watching humanity glitch. This woman made a fortune telling people to follow their gut, he said, even when their gut was clearly dead wrong. And let's be honest, at some point that's not intuition anymore. That's just gas and denial. Sold at $39.99 per scented lie. And
you've got these accusations against him. You had a book that you were supposed to produce about Michael Jackson in the context of litigation where you were required to turn this stuff over, and you lied saying that you didn't have it, and you only got found out because Random House and these other publishers admitted you shopped it to them and turned over the metadata to Michael Jackson's estate. My point is simply, this one accuser was very compromised, and she had him right after the documentary. It aired on HBO right after. Didn't ask a question. Then she gets Meghan Markle. That was another propaganda fest.
And then there's the weight loss saga. Oh, mercy, Kelly nearly shattered the sarcasm meter. So let me get this straight, she said. A woman who spent decades preaching body positivity is now hawking weight loss drugs like they're the latest skincare miracle? Did Oprah find self-love or just a fatter paycheck? Rogan's laughter exploded, more like a busted motorcycle trying to start, because the message was clear. You're perfect just the way you are, until the money says otherwise. The audience, they were losing losing it, metaphorically exploding in the chaos of truth. Because for all the sage wisdom draped over Oprah's brand equity, her empire rests on contradictions so huge they deserve their own zip code. She's the queen of authenticity, yet every single moment of her carefully crafted persona has been curated since 1986. The advocate? Yeah, she's the advocate for anything that pays, including platforming snake oil sellers who claim cancer can be cured with smoothies. The moral compass of America. That compass always points toward whatever is most profitable. Rogan and Kelly didn't drop new revelations. They just said aloud what everyone was thinking but too polite or scared to voice, without the sugarcoating wielding chainsaws instead of whispers. And honestly, someone had to do it, because for years Oprah's been soaring above criticism like a wisdom fairy with a private jet. You question her, you're a hater. You dissect her brand, you're not in alignment. But Rogan and Kelly, they didn't align. They attacked, exposed, and left Oprah's motivational grift empire smoldering in their wake.
My point is coming from the other way. She had the accusers there, and the accusers may or may not have had this experience with Michael Jackson.
Oh, you're talking about the HBO doc?
Yes.
Yes.
But she failed to bring up prior inconsistencies in their stories that really did compromise their stories. I don't know what happened.
I understand what you're saying.
So
Okay,
I'm just saying, as a journalist, which she purports to be,
right,
it was a complete fail.
Right.
And then she committed the same failure with Meghan Markle,
Yes.
where she didn't press any of her claims of racism in the royal family. And now we have the ultimate culmination of her journalistic fails. Oprah didn't help by sort of saying it's cheating. What do you mean it's cheating? It's a drug that helps people control their appetite. How is that cheating? So she was probably on the wrong side of things when she was saying that. And now I think she was sort of forced to admit, because as you say, it's obvious. Somebody like Oprah, who's constantly up and down with the weight and hasn't been on the skinnier side for a long time. And then suddenly, after this miracle drug comes out, like, we know. But she's still a spokesperson for Weight Watchers, and I guess she's going to still tell us that the point system is really what's behind the weight loss. When she first hit the scene in like the 1980s, and she was fresh out of Chicago, she was in Chicago for the launch of her national talk show. She was something electric and interesting and authentic, you know? I miss Fat Oprah. She was just genuine. Now this thin Ozempic Oprah has lost, along with the pounds, her heart, her sense of authenticity. And what we're getting these days is this cleansed, elite, billionaire version who wants to scrub the record of fact.
At some point, Kelly dropped a bomb so heavy it shattered the whole illusion. You're not a media mogul anymore, just a billionaire lifestyle blogger with a cult following. Joe Rogan didn't just nod, he doubled down, calling out how wellness is sold like McDonald's sells salads, looking fresh and healthy until you actually check the ingredients. That was the entire roast. No gotchas, no debates, just two people standing amid the ruins of a glitter-covered empire, asking the question nobody dared to voice. How did we let this mess drag on so long? Strip away the scented candles, the soft piano soundtrack, and the slow-motion tears, and what remains is an empire built purely on vibes, with real consequences in the messy, unforgiving real world. Thanks to Rogan and Kelly, the vibe is finally dead. What once passed as a media empire now looks more like a luxury hallucination. They didn't just point fingers, they tore down the facade like it was cheap wallpaper peeling off a mansion of delusion. Beneath the polished wood floors and vision board glitter lurked a full-blown self-help Ponzi scheme, candles and all. Oprah didn't create a brand, she built a belief system where she's both the profit and the product line. And the hypocrisy? Absolutely gourmet. Here's a woman preaching be your authentic self, while only allowing photos under lighting so soft it practically needs a permission slip. She sells vulnerability by the truckload, but hides behind PR layers so thick the Pentagon looks like glass. Rogan was almost impressed, muttering under his breath about the industrial-grade curation protecting her image. More security than Fort Knox holds gold. Kelly didn't even flinch. She's a master at spotting spin. And Oprah's spin game, it's in a league of its own. Pure, unfiltered elite level. One moment, Oprah's barefoot in a sun-dappled meadow, preaching emotional healing like she's the personal therapist to your soul. A beacon of authenticity everyone's supposed to worship. But just when you start believing in the magic, boom, she's charging five-figure sums for retreats that, in reality, are nothing more than high-end group therapy disguised as cucumber water spirituality with a luxury price tag that only the ultra-privileged can afford. Of course, the whole thing is sponsored to the teeth because authenticity comes with a marketing budget. Then comes the theatrical performance, the crocodile tears, the soulful, lingering eye eye contact that's designed to make you feel seen while also pulling every emotional string. The dramatic pauses stretched longer than most people's attention spans, perfectly timed to maximize the emotional sucker punch. Even Joe Rogan, the hardcore meat and potatoes truth junkie who can usually sniff out any fakery, was left stunned, struggling to decide, is this genuine emotional growth or just an Oscar-worthy marketing production? Because every episode, every special, every pseudo-confession Oprah paraded out wasn't just entertainment. It was a brick in a towering cathedral of manufactured self-worth dressed up as a public service. Oprah doesn't just have fans, she has disciples, devoted followers who thank her for every ounce of manipulation wrapped in layers of velvet and syrupy gratitude. People literally tear up just being near her, as if enlightenment came with a welcome mat and a discount code, like salvation was on sale. And Kelly, she didn't waste a second. She went straight for the jugular with brutal clarity, exposing the harshest truth of all. What's worse than fake humility? Fake activism, the ultimate con that sells virtue and compassion as a product while exploiting the very people it claims to uplift. Kelly tore through that illusion with surgical precision, unmasking the luxury of pretense and the high price of hypocrisy. Because in the end, behind every tear and every soft-spoken mantra lies a machine built to profit from hope. And that's the real scandal nobody wants to talk about. Kelly's eyes never wavered. She's seen every spin tactic in the book. And Oprah? She's the reigning queen of the spin cycle. One moment she's barefoot in some idyllic meadow, preaching emotional healing like she's handing out soul prescriptions. The next, she's charging a small fortune for retreats that are basically upscale group therapy sessions, cloaked in cucumber water mysticism, complete with luxury sponsorships. Then the show begins. The tears, the intense eye contact, and those agonizingly long dramatic pauses designed to milk every drop of your attention. Even Joe Rogan, the ultimate seeker of raw truth, was left wondering, is this genuine transformation or just a masterclass in marketing theater? Because every interview, every confessional was just another brick in a grand cathedral of manufactured self-worth masquerading as public service. Oprah doesn't just command fans, she has followers who worship her every move, thanking her for every bit of velvet-wrapped manipulation. People literally tear up just from her presence, as if salvation were a product you could buy with a discount code. And Kelly, she struck hard and fast, pinpointing the real villain here: fake activism. Because when humility is just a mask for exploitation, the whole act falls apart. And Kelly tore that mask off with surgical precision.